Hey, so today I'm going to be talking about Furby 2012 and Furby Booms. As you can see, I got new batteries. I got 4 Energizers each for each Furby. These are Energizer Max. I don't like using Duracells as they corrode more than Energizers do, even though they are more powerful. I also have my screwdriver to undo the case at the bottom. So the Furby on the left is a 2012, while the Furby on the right is a Furby Boom. Furby Booms have slits in their ears and plastic feet, as you can see. While Furby 2012, they have whole ears, and they have fabric feet. These tend to get a lot more stained easier if they're lighter colors. So Furby Boom is the updated version of the Furby 2012. They arrived in 2013 with the slogan, "A new generation is hatching." These Furbies could connect to their own app. Later, a revamped Furby Boom Crystal series was released in 2014. I only have 2 Crystal Furbies, but they're packed away right now. Furblings based on Furby Booms were released in late 2013. Furblings based on the Crystal series was released in 2015. A Wookiee Furby based on the Star Wars called Furbaka was also released based on this design. It had a separate app. Furby Boom has various new colors and different personalities compared to the 2012 Furby. The 2012 Furby has 6 different personalities. The default personality, which is also kind of like a Valley Girl personality, Chatterbox personality, Sweet personality, Crazy personality, Grumpy personality, and Diva personality. Furby Booms only have 5 personalities, which is the Sweet personality, the Hyper personality, the Rocking personality, the Jelly personality, and the Feisty personality. So this is the Black Bat Charcoal Furby. And this is just the Triangles Furby, as you can see. It's got triangles. So as you can see on the bottom of the Furby, the first thing you probably notice is these little pieces of tape, paper tape. I wrote these names when I was little, or I used to name the Furby based off of Furbish language. I used to just name them like that, but I'm just demonstrating how to unscrew. So these ones have 2 screws. Sometimes these things come out and they actually wobble back and forth. I don't know what you call it, but some of my Furbies actually walk with these. Like, they actually walk forward sometimes. Yeah, you can see this one is out right now. This is a comparison. This one may need to be cleaned for corrosion. It still works though, so I probably didn't clean it due to that. And I got this Furby, like I said, when I was younger. You can see, first things first, there's a little green button. This is the reset button. And you can see right there, it says refresh. And it's very easy to press. Like, you don't have to press it all the way inward, you just press it down. Now this one has a reset button as well, but there's like no indicators that this is a reset. But it is. And this one you can't press down, you're going to need like a paper clip to press this one down. They're essentially the same Furby, just with different designs and with different personalities. But they essentially do the same thing, and they're made up of the same components. Had a little glitch there. You can see it already starts working. It already starts working when there is batteries in there, and so it makes it kind of troublesome when you're trying to screw back the battery case. If I had to choose one that I liked, it would probably be the 2012 Furby, just because the personality is quite simple, and I feel like the Furby Boom's personalities, they're all over the top and over eccentric, to the point that it makes them annoying. But I really like the Furby Boom's designs, and their plastic feet was very smart because these fabric feet do tear and they do rip and they get stains in them. And they don't have any on and off switches, so these Furbies are much harder to get to go to sleep versus the 1998 Furbies, because the 1998 Furbies only detect loud noises, and these Furbies can detect like whispers, so it's very hard because you may be just moving and then they think that you're talking to them, and so they start up again and they start talking and they won't actually go to sleep. To get them to go to sleep easily, I just lay them on their back, because they have a back sensor, but I did just take out the batteries because that's a lot easier as well. The battery cases are quite similar as well. So let's say your Furby is not talking, not turning on, and not moving, and you actually did try to reset it, like I showed you with the reset button near their battery case. You can clean off any corrosion and leave the batteries in overnight, because it sometimes takes a while for these Furbies to warm up, and there might be a loose battery wire, so you might have to take apart your Furby and locate the loose or sliced wire. So let's say your Furby thinks it's being shaken. If your Furby thinks it's being shaken while in the vertical position, and it switches its personality to feisty mode, this is for Furby Booms only. The Furby tilt sensor is broken or too sensitive. For instance, if the Furby dances, he or she may stop since they think they are being shaken. I advise to take apart the Furby to clean and replace the tilt sensor. So a lot of people don't know where the Furby tilt sensor is at on these Furbies. When you open them up, take the front plate off the face, then you'll find that the sensor is a black box located on the left side of the Furby. So yeah, I've heard people breaking into it piece by piece, and when it was broken, they would turn on their Furby and it fixes them. I've never actually tried this before because I've never had my Furby experience that, but if it works, it works. They made an actual design flaw with the tilt sensor. The box was actually too small for the metallic ball itself, so it's always closing close to the circuit, and every movement is basically registered as a shake. So let's say your Furby lips and eyes and body are moving, and it's moving perfectly, it's working, but there's no sound. You can check the wire contacts on the speaker and clean them to make sure all the wires are properly connected. If the wires are connected to your Furby, then you'll need a donor Furby to swap out the speakers. They sell some pretty cheap broken Furbies on eBay. That way the broken Furby can use its working speaker in your Furby to fix it. Just make sure you don't get one that has a muted speaker on eBay. And I know that's hard because if they're broken, you don't really know if they are mutes. Furby and Furby Boom speakers are very similar and same in diameter. So their speakers, I believe, are located right here, and they're like right there on each one. And they are just plugged in to the actual chipboard. Here's a Furby speaker from 2012 that I used for parts. This one does work perfectly. It has sound, so if I ever get a mute one, I have a speaker replacement. It like tucks in, there's like a little snap on the side, and this is a piece that goes into the circuit board. It's enclosed with these snaps on either side of it, and then the speaker's down in there. Here's also some more interesting parts of a Furby. This one I used for parts as well. You can see that's the eyelids. There's a spring behind the beak. And then this piece right here is the projector for the LCD eyes. And for some reason, when I took apart this Furby, and I was using this Furby as parts, this actually was still lighting up with the Valley Girl eyes. I mean, it's not doing it now, but there was no wires soldered, everything was unplugged, and the eyes were still doing something. They were actually still moving. And so I thought that was actually kind of creepy because I don't know why the eyes were still on when it wasn't connected to anything. There was actually eyes, so I don't know if it was just a delayed reaction. So yeah. So let's say your Furby is working, it's talking, but it's not moving, and it keeps shutting down every minute, and the speaker is just kind of making weird fuzzy crackling noises. This means that the motor has burnt out, which is a sad thing because the only way to fix it is that you're going to need a replacement. So it's a 6-volt DC motor. So you can replace it from a PC DVD reader, the door opener motor. The shaft is smaller, but it's okay. The diameter is good, but you'll need a soldering gun. So once you get the 6-volt DC motor, you'll need to solder it on the pre-existing motor wires. Get the Furby moving, and you solder on the wires, and the sound is still an issue. You might need to replace the speaker. If it's the gears grinding, then I recommend using WD-40 lubricant. It will help smoother the flow of movements and limit the sound. Here's an example of what the motor looks like. It connects to this red connector. It's a brown wire and a red wire. So I recommend lubricating the gears first before replacing the motor, as debris sometimes paralyzes them. Also, the motor will emit an odd smell indicating that it is burnt out. You can try bouncing the motor by hitting it against your hand. That is how I got them to move very slowly. The PCB board that controls the movement could also be corrupted or broken. This is the rectangular board by the motor. The motor also has a circuit board underneath it that you can also clean it with rubbing alcohol and a Q-tip to remove the acid spills or dirt. You can replace the motor from a PC DVD reader. So the 6-volt brushless DC motor is a generic description for a motor. It's a DC as opposed to AC, which means you have to set it to run on batteries and rotate in either direction. It's designed to run with 6 volts of power running through it, which is equivalent to 4 AA's or AAA batteries when they're 1.5 volts each. And it's pretty standard for all Furbies. If you Google OLS 1D390 motor, it looks super common, and it's an all-purpose motor that could work. 2012 Furbies were rushed into production, so this is why they actually go bad so easily and quickly. So once you get the motor, you're going to have to detach the white worm gear. You can use a pair of tweezers or pliers to pull it off, but sometimes you have to pop the lid of the motor to get a better grip on the gear. You can also order a replacement online. It's usually 10 mm length in size. The shaft of the motor is usually 2 mm diameter, and the gear has a 1.95 mm hole designed for a tight fit, so I guess that's why it doesn't want to come off the old motor. You'll just have to use more force. So once you do all that, you'll need to cut the motor wires in half right here and solder them into the new motor. You do not cut the red connector. You cut the wires an inch or more above the connector and solder the wires to the replacement motor. So sometimes when you take apart the Furby, the tape of the Furby is actually ripped. The tape is a kind of double-sided electrical tape that is laminated in tinfoil, I believe. It's soldered in 2 different spots, one for the head and one for the back. The tape is easy to get broken and there's a way to fix it. I usually patch up the tape on the inside with Scotch tape, sometimes adding tinfoil for the rips for support. I don't put the tape on the outside because then the sensor for the back/head wouldn't work and the Furby wouldn't feel you petting it. There are wires connecting it as the pet sensor, like the tummy sensor but more complicated. The hardest thing about getting these Furbies apart is around the ears. Either you can rip the ears off, which has happened to some of my Furbies before, where you can actually take the ears off of the sockets, like this. Or you can cut the fur around it, or there are small little snaps in the fur. You can actually hear it underneath, and you can unsnap those, but sometimes they end up bending and breaking off, so I usually cut the fur and then sew it back on. So here's a duplicate Furby that I have. It's just like the black bat charcoal one right here. But this one actually has a little bit of a problem. It does work, but there's something wrong with the tail. When I pull it, I don't hear anything. And you should be able to hear a little click noise like this one. This is a tail sensor. So as you can see, this Furby actually has a lot of corrosion. I just got this Furby yesterday, so I am going to be cleaning him up before we actually take him apart. I do have the batteries in right now, and I do want to show you guys something. He is actually not working. Well, he is actually has the light on. It takes actually a while to get these things working. It takes a while for them to warm up. As you can see, he sounds exactly like this one. Okay, so I changed his personality. The Furby personality, you have to flip it over and hold down the tongue sensor and the tail sensor. His tail sensor is broken. Okay, I got some rubbing alcohol and some Q-tips, and I'm going to clean him up. Okay, so I cleaned some more off camera, and I think this looks actually pretty good concerning all that blue. The Furby is actually working despite all that original corrosion on there, so it's not like it's gonna break because all I did was just clean more off of it. Now we're gonna take them apart. I'm gonna unscrew these 8 screws. I don't know how I'm gonna get this one out, but that'll be fun. It's very corroded. So I unscrewed all the screws. These ones are still staying in here, but you can see that this thing is loose and it's gonna come right off, hopefully. Appears to be glued in some areas. It's actually very spiky because of these like nails. You see the spikes? It's quite spiky. They're like thorns. I pulled everything up. This is the belly sensor. Here's the speaker. Here's the tape. More tape like this. Attached to this pink piece right here, which I believe is attached to a spring. And seeing how corroded it is, I think the spring is just really corroded. I'm going to take it apart because I am going to be customizing him. So I don't really care that much. I'm going to still have him working though. I'm going to try to get the fur off to wash it because it does smell. So first things first, I got to unsnap this. Okay, so as you can see, I did get the fur off. I removed 2 screws from here and I removed some snaps as well from the face. I did cut off this. I cut these right here and right here, and then I cut along this edge. Sadly, the stuffing is showing and is coming out, so I'll have to re-sew this up later. And I did have to cut around the ears because these ear snaps were not coming off. As you can see, they were actually breaking on me, so I just cut the ears. This is what it looks like completely taken apart. And here's the fur. I'm going to be washing it because it does smell really bad. It smells like corrosion. It looks actually very pretty, you know, it's very soft, but where I smell it, it smells like acid and corrosion. 3 cups of this Corelle. It's for fabric, it's this fabric softener. And I'm going to add some water. Now I'm just going to let it soak, brush through it afterwards, and reattach the fur and make a custom Furby out of it. I'm going to let it soak for around 30 minutes. And I am going to rinse it off afterwards. If you don't, it actually makes the fur greasy. So yeah, taking these Furbies apart to get to the motor can actually be extremely complicated. You put this Furby back together the same way I had taken it apart, but you have to actually lift up this tape. I believe he also has to lift up this tape, yes, because you have to get to these 2 screws. Then you have to undo this screw, then that screw, then that screw. And there should be a black container with around 7 screws, and then you undo that, and the motor's right there. Actually see the motor right here. I'll be putting them back together on camera because I'm going to be doing something completely different with the fur and completely different with the look of the Furby, so it's going to be quite different, but it will still be working and talking.